All right. Hi, everyone, and welcome to our virtual event on Microsoft's upcoming end of life. My name is Mallory Treadway. I'll be hanging around in the background today, kind of monitoring your chat and your questions as Toby presents today. Just a couple housekeeping things before we get started. The recording and slide deck will be available by request. You can reach out to your Keller Schroeder account manager if you would like that. If you're not quite sure who your Keller Schroeder account manager is, just let me know and I can put you in touch with someone. Also, as Toby is presenting today, I'm going to be dropping a link in the chat to schedule a follow-up call. If the messaging he is saying is near and dear to you and you want to reach out to our account management team to schedule some additional time, that's what that link is for. And then one final thing, you will see some TBS branding as Toby clicks through his deck today. Unfortunately, Toby was unable to give this presentation during our 2025 TBS, so that's why we wanted to go ahead and get this scheduled so that way you guys can still get the information. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Toby.
All right, thank you, Mallory. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Today, we are going to be going over the presentation I was going to be giving at the Technology Vendor Summit this past April. Unfortunately, I had a medical emergency and had to leave the event before I had a chance to present. So we thought that we would just circle back on this because it is a fairly important topic. What we're going to be talking about primarily is the end of life of Microsoft Exchange 2016-2019 that's coming up in the middle of October of this year. And then also what comes next, right? Microsoft Exchange SE, and then how that's going to impact you, correct? So as I said already, my name is Toby Ellis. We may have worked together before on Exchange or Windows 365 related tasks. I am Senior Microsoft Consultant here at Keller Schroeder. I've been an employee owner for 17 years. I'm a certified Microsoft 365 admin expert, certified in Microsoft 365 messaging, security and compliance in Azure, artificial intelligence, and also in Mimecast. So most of the work that I do centers around Microsoft messaging products, but I also work in Mimecast and Proofpoint, SQL Server, all things Active Directory on premise as well. I've been doing that for most of my 27-year career. Okay, so just to restate, we're going to be talking about Exchange 2016-2019 end of life, Microsoft Exchange SE, which is the product that's going to come after Exchange 2019, and then Microsoft Exchange Online, which is the Exchange component of Microsoft 365. Okay, so for Exchange 2016 and 2019, the official end of life date is October 14th of this year, 2025. At that time, Microsoft is not going to be releasing any more security updates or support packages. So if you have Exchange 2019 CU15, then you are currently up to date. I don't know that they're going to put out another cumulative update for Exchange 2019. I think our next step is just going to be to Exchange SE. And because of this end of life date looming here, just another 4 months out in the future, we want to go ahead and get some proactive planning in place with our clients, and then anyone who maybe isn't a client and is getting some assistance in planning for what you're going to do post Exchange 2019. So the risk posed after end of life, obviously there's some security vulnerabilities. If you run Exchange on premise now, or if you have run it in the last few years, you are very well aware that Exchange on premise has been the target of several large vulnerabilities that require like immediate patching. So end of life, you're going to risk being vulnerable without the hope of getting a patch. There's going to be compliance issues if you have to run security scans to provide compliance reports end-of-life product is going to show up as a severity 5 vulnerability. It's also going to be more difficult to get support, and you face the possibility of service disruption if you are vulnerable and attacked. Okay. So I just want to state for the record, as we go through these slides, if you have any questions, go ahead and feel free to put those in the chat. And Mallory will let me know, and I'm happy to answer those questions as we go. There's not a whole lot of content in here, but just to make sure that we get your questions answered. Okay, so for option 1, after end of life, what are our options? Option number 1 is Exchange SE, right? What is Exchange SE? Exchange SE is the next version of Microsoft Exchange on premise, right? So like right now we have Exchange 2016, 2019. Exchange SE is the next product in that line. It is, for now, it is going to be an upgrade, which is very nice. That's something brand new to Exchange. Exchange has always been install a new server and migrate to it. But with Exchange SE, if you have Exchange 2019 CU15, you'll be able to install Exchange SE right on top of that, like you would any other cumulative update, and not have to go through an on-premise migration to that product. Now, if you have a cluster, like if you have a multi-node Exchange cluster, or if you have an Exchange hybrid environment with 365, that becomes a little more complicated. But if you have a single server on-premise with 2019, we can just do an upgrade to Exchange SE. With Exchange SE, Microsoft is introducing subscription-based licensing, right? So there's 2 ways that that's going to work. If you have Exchange 2019 with software assurance, which is like basically Microsoft's 3-year software maintenance plan, if you carry software assurance on Exchange 2019, then Exchange SE, you can install that for the life of your software assurance policy at no cost, right? If you don't, then you're going to basically be buying a license for Exchange Online, but then running Exchange SE on premise, right? You're going to get traditional updates and support for Exchange SE, just like you would any other on-premise Microsoft product, either through WSUS or Microsoft updates, or through whatever, if you use SCCM or Barramundi or PDQ or anything like that to deploy your updates, Qualys. You'll get traditional updates and support like any other on-premise product. It will support a hybrid environment. So if you have an Exchange server now that is hybrid with Microsoft 365, then it will support that. Although the upgrade becomes a little more complicated, but it is possible, right? And as I said before, you get an in-place upgrade from Exchange 2019 CU15 to Exchange SE. It'll just update like a cumulative update. So any questions on that so far? We good to move on?
We are good to move on.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about option number 2. Option number 2 is Exchange Online, which is part of the Microsoft 365 suite. So something I'm not sure that everyone is familiar with, but I would like to just let you know today that Exchange Online is its own product. So if you wanted to have Exchange Online, but not subscribe to the rest of the Microsoft 365 suite, you can do that, right? I think there's a lot of reasons that you should work in 365, but if you don't want to, and you just want to move your mailboxes off premise and into Exchange Online, you can do that without purchasing the rest of the 365 suite and subscription, right? So the reason that I like Exchange Online in here, because it is cloud first, it's highly available and scalable. Microsoft takes care of all the infrastructure for you. We have built-in security, compliance, and reporting for 365. You have lower infrastructure costs because you don't have to maintain hardware. You don't have to maintain the very large disk volumes that Exchange often has. And then you don't have to pay for things like power and security and a lot of those other costs around maintaining a data center to keep your Exchange servers in. Another advantage of Exchange Online is that native support for DKIM, which we'll talk about a little bit more later, which is basically outbound message signing. Exchange on-premise does not have that natively. You have to get that from your Edge product, whether that's Mimecast or Proofpoint or Barracuda or whatever you have on the front end of your mail system. That's where you would set up DKIM today. But if you just move into Exchange Online, we have native support for DKIM. Any questions about that? The Exchange Online options?
None so far.
Okay, great. We'll move on. So to compare the two, what we'll have is if you look at Exchange SE, as far as platform goes, it runs on premise. For Exchange Online, it runs in the 365 cloud. And again, you can purchase Exchange Online a la carte. You don't have to purchase the entire 365 suite to get it. Okay. As far as updates go, Exchange SE gets traditional updates just like any other server product that you have, just like the way you get updates for Exchange today. And then for Exchange Online, that's all auto updating. Microsoft takes care of all of that. So Microsoft takes care of patching the environment on the back end. So if there is a vulnerability, Microsoft is already rolling out updates to remediate that vulnerability, sometimes before you even find out about it. So Exchange Online is auto updating. That's one less thing for you to worry about in terms of infrastructure. For infrastructure in the two platforms, Exchange SE is customer managed, right? So you're going to have servers and storage and power and rack space and security and all of that to house your Exchange server just like you would any other on-premise server. Even if you're running it in like a VMware environment, you still, there's still going to be costs involved to run Exchange there. And then in Exchange Online, that is all Microsoft managed. They take care of all the infrastructure needs for Exchange Online. In terms of cost for Exchange SE, of course, you have your infrastructure hardware costs plus a subscription or software assurance if you already have it. And then with Exchange Online, it is subscription based. It is $4 a month. Excuse me, $4 a month per mailbox. And if you do not have a current SA agreement with Microsoft for Exchange, then that's basically going to be the same price to run an Exchange SE mailbox on premise, right? So if we're thinking about migrating or upgrading, so migrating to 365 or upgrading to Exchange SE, what we want to look at in order to help you make the best decision for your business is, what does your current infrastructure look like and where are you from a licensing standpoint, right? Right. If you already have software assurance on Exchange on premise, and you're running Exchange on premise and don't plan to move to 365 anytime in the near future, then maybe staying on premise and just doing an in-place upgrade to Exchange SE is the best path for you, right? Do you have compliance or regulatory needs, right? And would it be easier for you to just move those compliance headaches into the cloud as opposed to worrying about them on premise? And then what kind of connectivity and bandwidth do you have? Like we have a lot of rural customers who don't necessarily have like a good backup internet connections because they may only have access to one provider. So for them, it might make more sense to leave their Exchange on premise because they may not have the consistent connectivity or bandwidth to support cloud-only products in their environment, right? Next point is, does your staff have the skill set to support one or the other, right? If you have staff that's been trained on Exchange and then that's what they know, moving to 365 or Exchange Online can be a big learning curve, right? In my opinion, I think it's a lot easier to learn because a lot of the most complicated parts of Exchange on premise is all of the infrastructure and having to manage it in Active Directory and internal DNS and firewall rules and so on and so on. Becomes very complicated to run Exchange on premise, whereas in the cloud, even though you would have to learn the new management tools, it's much easier for a small staff to manage Exchange Online because Microsoft is doing really all of the hard work in terms of infrastructure, and all you really have to do is just manage your users and their rights, right? Okay, and then the last consideration, as always, which should be our first consideration, is downtime and migration risks, right? Do you have the ability to, take a day, an evening, a weekend to cut over from Exchange on premise to Exchange Online, right? Like I said, if you're Exchange 2019 CU15, then Exchange SE is a in-place upgrade. It will apply. So there's really not a lot of risks there. If you run VMware, we just take a snapshot, we upgrade to Exchange SE, validate the installation, and then we're done, right? It's a little more complicated if we go to 365. We have to set you up in hybrid mode, migrate your mailboxes, and decommission Exchange. It's a little more involved, but that might be the right path for you because of the trade-offs with the ease of management and then the lack of infrastructure and increased security that you're going to get with 365. Anybody have any questions about that?
I don't see any so far, but just a reminder, anyone can drop any kind of questions in the chat and Toby would be happy to answer them.
Yeah, a little chat icon at the top, just pop it in there and I'd be happy to answer questions as we go. And of course, at the end, we're going to have some time to take questions as well. Okay, so the relevant dates coming up for Exchange SE. Exchange SE goes RTM, which means it's, general release in July, right? So it's coming up. So they expect to release Exchange SE in July, and all the Microsoft documentation I'm reading, even as of today, still says that. So between July and October, we're going to have those 4 months where we can get your existing Exchange environment so where we can just do an in-place upgrade to Exchange SE, or we can begin planning a migration to 365. So one of the things of note is that Exchange SE CU1, which is the first cumulative update for Exchange SE, which they have scheduled to come out in the first half of 26, right? Usually probably like in the spring of 26. Once that is released, Microsoft is no longer going to support in-place upgrades to Exchange 2019. So at that point, you have to migrate if you want to stay on premise. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind, that if you are on Exchange 2019 CU15 and you want to stick with that for a while, or you're in a hybrid mode and we need to update your on-premise server, then we would need to accomplish that sometime between July and spring of 26, right? Ideally, we would accomplish it by the end of life date in October, but in case we just can't hit that date, then we have another hard deadline of the first half of 2026. All right. So what are our next steps? So next steps would be this. One, you can contact your Keller Schroeder account manager. I cannot see who is on the call. So if we have done business before, if I have worked in your Exchange environment, feel free to reach out to me personally. Send me an email. Let me know what you've got and what your options are. We can set up a brief phone call to kind of go over what those options would look like. right? Once that's the case, we want to evaluate your current environment. We want to make the best choice for you as to whether to upgrade your existing environment or migrate to a new one. We want to develop a roadmap for you and a timeline that fits with your business needs. Maybe maybe you have downtime around the holidays, like a lot of people do. Then we want to make sure that we have resources available to help you with that upgrade or migration, when the time comes. And then, lastly, we want to go ahead and get you on the schedule to upgrade or migrate your environment, depending on which route you choose, right? Okay. And then we have but wait, there's more. And what more there is are these ongoing concerns for SPF, DMARC, and DKIM, right? So if you have not heard by now, all of the major email platforms, Yahoo, Google, Microsoft with Outlook and Live and Hotmail, right? They are starting to up their requirements for your email validity, right? So we want to make sure that your emails are as deliverable as possible. We want to make sure that your emails look 100% legit, so they're not filtered into someone's spam folder or worse, blocked, right? And I see it happen all the time. So how do we make your emails deliverable? We do that by implementing SPF, DMARC, and DKIM, right? So SPF is a DNS record, it's a text record. And what it says is, it lists all of your valid sources of email. So here at Keller Schroeder, that's going to be Office 365, Mimecast. We probably have some marketing partners that send emails on our behalf. Those organizations are in our SPF record. We use SendGrid for our e-commerce website, so that's in our SPF record, right? And then so when someone receives an email from us, they look at the SPF record to see if it is from a valid source. And the more that you align with your SPF record, the more deliverable your email becomes. So to go with your SPF record, there's a thing called a DMARC record. And what a DMARC record is, it is another DNS record, the text record, that tells your email recipients what to do if they get an email from your domain that is not from a valid source, right? And you can choose to report on that, which means they send you back a message that says, hey, I got this email from a wacky IP address that's not in your SPF record. Or they might send you back one that says, hey, I got it from this IP address that maybe isn't in your SPF record, but it should be, right? So sometimes we can use DMARC reports to find messages that aren't deliverable but should be, and we can add those things to our SPF record. Okay. And then lastly is DKIM. DKIM is just message signing. So you, in either in Exchange Online or on your mail filter, outbound mail filter, whether it's Mimecast, Proofpoint, Barracuda, whatever, you set up a DKIM record, which is a private key, public key pair, right? And then it's just a key that lives in DNS. And then the key gets added to the message header of all of your outbound email saying that this is valid, and it's added by your email system. And the key will even stay with that email if it's forwarded. So it will show that like the forward from your domain is still valid because the DKIM key matches what you say it has in DNS, right? That's just another way to ensure deliverability, and it is becoming mandatory for some email providers. So I just want to tack this on here because I always get a lot of questions about SPF, DMARC, and DKIM. These are not tools to block spam. These are tools to tell other companies that you're not spam, right? And then that way you can your email becomes deliverable, and that's what we want. We want maximum deliverability. We don't want any of your email going into someone's junk mail folder, or worse, getting blocked. And then these are the tools that we use to accomplish that. So I realize that's a whole lot to chew on there in 25 minutes. So do we have any questions? Questions about Exchange SE, questions about software assurance, questions about SPF DMARC or DKIM, anything along those lines? Have any questions regarding those items?
We did get some questions. Our first one is, if our organization is already working in Microsoft 365, is there anything for us to do at this time?
Okay. If you do not have any Exchange servers on premise, like if you're in 365 and you don't have any Exchange on premise for hybrid or anything at all, like you just don't have Exchange at all, there's nothing for you to do, right? This is primarily for people who have Exchange on premise, whether that's their main mail system or whether they have a server that's hybrid. That's what we need to be concerned about with end of life. If you're at 365 already, then Microsoft is taking care of updating that environment and keeping it secure, so there's really nothing more for you to do. However, depending on how you have the SPF, DMARC, and DKIM set up, we might need to look at that to see if there's ways that we can improve the way you're set up there. But as far as the end of life announcement for October, that does not affect 365.
Awesome. Thanks, Toby. The next one I have are, what are the downsides of migrating to Exchange Online and decommissioning an old Exchange server?
Wow, that's a good question. I think the downsides, and they're minimal, right? Is that if you have Exchange on premise now and you migrate to 365 with the end goal of being in 365 and getting rid of Exchange entirely, then some of the 365 management that you have to do at that point requires PowerShell, right? So if you are not yet familiar with PowerShell, then you would need to probably go ahead and get up to speed on some basic PowerShell management for things in 365 that are managed by PowerShell only. That's the only downside, other than just having to go through the migration process itself. But here at Keller Schroeder, myself, a couple of my coworkers, we do these every day, all the time. That's pretty much my life, is migrating people to 365. So we can help you through that. But that's really the only downside. I mean, and there's so many upsides to it. You get rid of that Exchange server, and for one, it is a huge security risk trying to maintain an Exchange server on premise, right? And they're complicated to manage, right? It's complicated to keep an Exchange server on premise and manage it. So you just get rid of all those headaches, and all you have to do is learn a little bit of PowerShell for when you have to change some things in 365, and that's it.
As a follow-up to that, Toby, we also got, what about Windows 10?
Okay. So Windows 10 is its own beast, and it is also going end of life at the same time. Like right around there, there's some other products that are end of life. A lot of them are on-premise products, like if you have a Skype for Business server, if you still have one of those hanging around, that's got to go, right? Windows 10 is going as well. That's the big one, really, other than Exchange. So if you have machines on Windows 10, we have tools that can look into your environment, pull the hardware reports on the machines, find out which of those machines are capable of running Windows 11 and helping you with a migration plan. But you're going to have the same issue come October, in that there aren't going to be any more updates for Windows 10, like any more security updates and that. So there's options there. You can upgrade your workstations to Windows 11. You can purchase new workstations that have Windows 11 pre-installed. You can look at virtual desktop environments. If you wanted to go that route, you could look at Azure virtual desktops, and then using thin clients is another option. So that is a whole beast unto itself. So what I would recommend doing is, if you feel like you are challenged by that end of life for Windows 10, get a hold of your account manager so they can get with one of us here on the Windows team, and we can talk about it. So everyone's environment's going to be a little bit different, and then what works best for you may not work best for everybody. But those are the big ones we've seen right now: upgrade existing hardware, purchase new hardware with Windows 11, or develop a virtual desktop strategy. So.
We have one more question that just came in, and it says, I'm running on Exchange 2016 hybrid server with Office 365 with the on-prem Exchange handling relays internally. Would you suggest moving everything to online or upgrading our hybrid environment to SE?
That's a good question. So my question back to you would be, do you have any mailboxes on Exchange, or is it just there as a hybrid server? You can put your answer in the chat. So, but if you don't have any mailboxes and it's only there as a hybrid server, right, but doesn't actually host any mailboxes, it's just being used as a relay, then I would get rid of it, right? I would basically stand up a Windows Server 2019 with SMTP relay services on it, make that your new relay, and then decommission Exchange 2016. So
they said just hybrid server.
Yeah, if it's just a hybrid, I'd get rid of it. There's no, that's a lot of infrastructure and a big security vulnerability footprint, right? In order to do that. So if you have 2016, you're probably not covered under SA. So you would have to pay for Exchange Server SE, which I think is like, I don't know, just for the server itself, not for the user licensing. It's probably like $800 or something. So, I would say, rather than paying to migrate to another hybrid endpoint, I would just change your relay setup depending on how many devices you have. Would depend. If you have just a couple of devices that are relayed, you can relay those directly into 365 or off of your edge filter like Mimecast, Proofpoint, Barracuda, or whatever. If you have a lot of devices that are relaying, let's just say a lot would be more than 10, more than 20. If you have a lot of devices that are relaying, then I would set up an internal relay, either on Windows. We've had clients do it on Linux if you have those skills, and then have that be a single endpoint to relay into 365. And I would just get rid of Exchange on premise at that point.
Those are all the questions we have for right now. Just a reminder, I dropped that link in the chat to schedule some time with your account manager. If you think of questions outside of this, or if you didn't get the answer you were looking for today, please take advantage of that meeting link. I'll also send it in a follow-up email to anyone who is on the call currently, so you can keep an eye out in your inbox for that. And if we don't have any more questions, thank you, Toby, for your time today. We appreciate it.
Yeah, you're very welcome. And if you have my email address, it's in the presentation. Feel free to reach out to me directly if you have any questions about your specific environment, maybe technical. I'd be happy to work with you on that.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.